Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to the end of November recap. The curtain has fallen on November, and with it my work year, but we'll come back to that fact a little bit later in the recap. It was another good month on the channel, including hitting 300 subscribers. Thank you guys for that, by the way. And we gave away a game along with it. Congratulations to Matthew on winning the giveaway from Mag23 Guadalcanal. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Speaking of games, we had quite a few of them on the channel, and several new ones, which might become a tradition on the channel to feature a bunch of new games in November. Admittedly, New Game November just kind of has a nice ring to it. Anyway, that random musing aside, let's recap everything we did on the channel in November, and first up was our first new game to the channel in Terraforming Mars, the dice game. Terraforming Mars, the dice game from Stronghold Games, has you trying to terraform Mars, once again in the Terraforming Mars universe, using dice to do it. Well, dice and cards rather than just the cards of the game. I found this to be a very approachable dice game, and it played solo very well. We did manage to terraform Mars in our playthrough, and I think it's a good introduction to the universe, just to get the feel for, okay, how does everything really start to fit together, getting a feel for some of the symbology in the universe, even though some of it's going to feel a little bit different from game to game. And actually, one of our AMA questions, that we'll come back to a little bit later, is going to be visiting this question of the three games in the Terraforming Mars universe, so stay tuned for that when we get into the Ask Me Anything questions. Anyway, that's it for Terraforming Mars, the dice game. Next up, we had yet another new game to the channel in Expeditions. Expeditions by Stonemaier Games is a tile and card-driven game where you're exploring the ruins of a meteorite after a meteorite hits in the Scythe universe. Anybody who knows my history with Scythe knows that this game had a bit of an uphill climb, but it actually made the climb very well. I really enjoyed this one, and I think a lot of it was just that it was set in the Scythe universe, but it was everything that Scythe wasn't. So it was actually comparatively simple. I did find it to be a very approachable game, where you've got your hand of cards on the left. You can play them with a worker, or you can go with a worker to get an additional effect. Or, basically, there are various actions you can take, where you can go vanquish your corruption, try to purify the lands, and your goal is to get the most wealth in the game. Obviously, when we played solo, we didn't get that, but like I said, I really enjoyed this one because it felt a lot more approachable to me than Scythe. It wasn't quite so overwhelming. We didn't have the whole 10,000-foot view feel where you were trying to do everything for your civilization, for your people, essentially. You weren't looking at a board where you're like, okay, what do I want to do? It wasn't as thinky, I guess, as Scythe is probably the way I'm going to put that. But I'm kind of rambling on Expeditions a little bit. I found it to be a lot more approachable, just because you had that much more narrow focus in this game. That's it for Expeditions. Next, we had a new war game to the channel, and our first ever game from Compass Games, as we played Night Fighter Ace. Night Fighter Ace from Compass Games puts you into the pilot seat of a German fighter plane during World War II in the night skies over Germany, trying to defend from the raids of the Allies. It definitely felt like an air version of the Hunters, which doesn't surprise me at all, since the designer of this game is actually the same designer of the Hunters in Gregory M. Smith. And I really enjoy that narrative focus, where similar to the Hunters and other games in that line, we can actually step in and out of this as additional background content on the channel. Everything was very intuitive. The card-driven play of it was actually a nice touch as well, where you definitely got the feel for how everything played there. Everything flowed it was fairly self-explanatory for how everything flowed. You start in your raid zone, you have to see if you got any spoof raids, then you roll in each zone for interception, and you eventually have to land the plane. Once again, you're building a story around your pilot. It definitely didn't I don't think it really had as much of the random just get shot down effects, where it'll accumulate over the course of a patrol, over a sortie, where you might eventually take enough damage to get shot down, but it doesn't just, I find you don't get just stuck in a loop where, like you do in the Hunters, where you just get caught with an escort or something and you just can't get away from it. You don't really get into that endless loop, which I really kind of liked with this game. But I'm rambling now on Night Fighter Ace. Next up, we played just our second sports game and another new one to the channel in Appa Hockey. Appa Hockey by Appa Games is a hockey simulator where you take two teams and you basically play through a game of hockey. We took out Boston and Montreal with both of their all-time great teams from the Appa universe. Boston actually won that game pretty handily by a score of 7-2. Sports games are actually pretty rare on the channel, but I'm actually learning a few more, and we'll have an AMA question on that a little bit later. It was very different, though, having to narrate everything and be talking constantly. I was definitely worn out when this one was over. But I did enjoy this one, and I think a lot of it was just how real it was, just how much realism there was to this game. There were a lot of numbers to check, which you saw as I had the dice around there, because there were a lot of numbers that, okay, I need to see this at first, at a glance. So I had dice set up for all of that. But that's it for Appa Hockey. Next up, we had an old favorite intrude on New Game November as we played Marvel Champions. Marvel Champions from Fantasy Flight Games is a living card game where you get dumped into the Marvel Comics universe building a hero and building a deck of cards around that hero, trying to defeat villains in the same. I took out Storm and Phoenix versus Claw earlier this month, and the ladies handled business in that one. They took out Claw pretty handily. There's definitely a ton of game to dig into on this one. We actually paid a visit over to Jester's channel a couple times as well, and I'm going to get rambly a little bit here. One of the games we played was Marvel Champions, where I can't remember what heroes he took out. I'm not going to dig through the video right now. But we definitely had a lot of fun with that, and related to Appa Hockey, I really enjoyed that, so we paid a visit over to Jester's channel as well to play a session of Appa Golf, which I haven't put on the channel yet because part of it was, actually a lot of it was that I've still been fighting a little bit with Appa Golf, trying to learn that. And that was one of the games that we played over on Jester's channel, where I wanted to get together with somebody who was a bit more familiar with the game and try to make heads or tails of it, especially since I had enjoyed Appa Hockey so much. Admittedly, that session was very helpful, and I could see turning into like a once-a-month kind of session, mainly on his channel, where we get together and basically learn a game that one of us has kind of been scratching our heads with, assuming the other knows how to play it. Usually it'll be him teaching me a game, but I'm hopeful there will be an occasion where I'll actually get to teach him a game, but I'm not holding my breath on that. Anyway, kind of getting a little bit rambly on that. Next up, we had another new game to the channel as we played Ark Nova. Ark Nova from Fureland Spiel has you building a zoo Admittedly, this is one of those games where the theme really doesn't do much for me, but mechanically there's a very sound game here. And this is one of those times where I've talked about this in the past, where theme, except in rare cases, theme isn't necessarily a death sentence in terms of a game's going to land in the collection or not. An uninteresting theme is not always a death sentence, but it definitely doesn't help. Where if a game is mechanically very interesting, I can sometimes overlook the theme. But if a game isn't mechanically interesting and the theme does nothing for me, then I'm obviously going to give it a pass. This is one of those games where it was mechanically interesting enough that I was able to give it a look. I forgot to play. We had a bit of a problem here because I thought I'd won the game at the time of making the video, but I realized later that I needed a lot more enclosures than I had, so we ended up not winning that game, which was unfortunate, but sometimes that's just how it goes. I needed to pay attention to that. I really enjoyed this game, though, and I could see this one hitting the channel again. There's a lot of replayability here, just in how the cards come out, and it's kind of similar to Terraforming Mars in that regard, where you really have to see what cards come out. You can't go into that game thinking, okay, I'm going to build for reptiles, or I'm going to build for birds, or I'm going to build water stuff, something like that. You have to be able to pivot at a moment's notice with the cards that are coming out, where maybe you start off, okay, I'm going to start building predators at the start of the game, but then all the reptiles start coming out, and I'm like, well, guess I'm building reptiles. So you do have to be able to adjust there. And like I said, I really enjoyed this one, and I see it hitting the channel. Next up, we had another old favorite as we started Christmas in Arkham with the Fate of the Elder Gods tournament. Fate of the Elder Gods from Greater Than Games has you switching sides in the Cthulhu mythos, where instead of playing as the investigators trying to banish the Ancient Ones, you're actually playing as the Ancient Ones trying to get yourselves summoned via your cultists. What we did was we ran a tournament in Fate of the Elder Gods, where there were 9 Ancient Ones that crossed into all 4 games, Fate of the Elder Gods and the 3 Arkham Horror files that we're going to see for Christmas in Arkham coming up in December. We split those Ancient Ones into 3 groups of 3, did solo playthroughs for each group, the winners of which then advanced to a final winners group, and the winner of that winners group then became our opponent for Christmas in Arkham. So during the play-in groups, we had Ithaca, Nyarlathotep, and Hastur advance to our winners group. Ithaca and Nyarlathotep would have offered rematches on previous campaigns. Ithaca was our opponent for Christmas in Arkham 2021, which was the very first time we ran Christmas in Arkham, and we won 2-0. Nyarlathotep was our opponent for the Summer of Lovecraft in 2022, which is basically just the summer version of Christmas in Arkham, and we lost the Summer of Lovecraft 2022 by a 3-0 score that wasn't even that close. But our winner for the Fate of the Elder Gods tournament this year, and our opponent for Christmas in Arkham, is the King in Yellow himself, Hastur. This is going to be kind of a rematch from the fall campaign in Arkham Horror the card game, where we took on Return to Path to Carcosa. We'll see that a little bit more when we get into the Investigator intro tomorrow and how that might fit into our story. Next up, we had another new game to the channel from Greater Than Games as we played Spirit Island yesterday. Spirit Island by Greater Than Games has you playing as spirits in a fantasy island, trying to keep settlers trying to keep settlers off your island, basically. I really enjoy this game, but our playthrough yesterday, we just couldn't get anything going to save our lives, and we ended up losing the game fairly quickly. I kept having to reclaim cards, especially with Lightning Swift Strike, and I think I was trying to play that spirit. I keep saying her, there's a long story behind that. We kept having to pick up cards with Lightning Swift Strike, and I never felt like I could get anything going with our spirits. It seemed like everything just got out of control and the powers didn't really cooperate with us at all. But like I said, I do enjoy this game and I'll probably get it on the channel again. I may drop down to 1 spirit just to see if that makes a difference. But that's it for Spirit Island. Last up, let's talk about the Greatest Boxer Tournament in Title Bout 2. Title Bout 2 by Straight Jab Media, as we featured it repeatedly, is a boxing simulator where we go through a deck of cards simulating through a boxing match. In our Greatest Boxer Tournament bouts this month, we had 2 Rockies get to the finals, as Rocky Balboa had a grueling bout with Vitaly Klitschko that went 15 rounds down to the very last card of his Killer Instinct, where he actually picked up a TKO on Vitaly. Rocky Balboa has actually disposed of both the Klitschko brothers, as we'll see when we look at the brackets in a minute. Opposing him in the finals will be Rocky Marciano, who actually outlasted Lennox Lewis in a 15-round marathon. And we'll talk about a little bit more about the location for the finals, but we'll take a quick look at the brackets here of the tournament once we tab over. There we go. So we can see here that, as I mentioned, Rocky Balboa took care of both Klitschko brothers. He took care of Vladimir in the first round of the tournament, then Vitaly in the semifinals. In between that, he had a bout against Ken Norton where he broke his hand and almost lost a majority decision because of that hand. As for Rocky Marciano, He had a 14-round marathon with Tyson Fury. Then he won against Ivan Drago in 3 rounds, and then defeated defeated Lennox Lewis in a 15-round marathon last week, I believe. I believe that was over Thanksgiving weekend that we played through Rocky Marciano against Lennox Lewis. So there's our brackets all set up. We'll tab back over here. Oop, not that one. Here we go. Tab back over here. And then with all the games recapped on the channel, let's recap Mystical Munchies. This month on Mystical Munchies, we were cooking out of the Hero's Feast, the official Dungeons & Dragons cookbook. And here's how each recipe went. For the appetizer, we made the orc bacon. This was actually a really good recipe. I really liked this. The bacon was just sweet enough to notice without totally overpowering you and being like, oh my god, this is way too sweet. There was too much sugar in that. And I think part of the thing there, and I don't know if it's necessarily a problem, but it's something to note. It might be sensitive to the bacon, because I think I used a hickory smoked bacon in that recipe. I may have to try that again with a bacon that isn't quite as sweet. Maybe that will make a difference in the sweetness. For the side, we made the Yawning Portal buttermilk biscuits. These are definitely best served warm, because as they started to cool off, I realized that their taste was going to start going, and yeah, these are best served warm. They are really good, and they actually turned out to be moist enough. I think I mentioned it during the recipe, but I was worried about the buttermilk biscuits being dry. So I was relieved that when we tasted it, when we did the taste test, it was actually still fairly moist. Then for the entree, we did the pan-fried knucklehead trout. This was a fairly oniony recipe, but that might have been how I prepared the shallots. It actually turned out to be very good. I've always been a big fan of fish. So pan-frying it was a little bit different because I usually bake it, but I did actually really like the pan-frying in this one. For the dessert, we made the Trolltide candied apples. These ended up being hard as a rock. I don't know what happened there, but the candy mixer definitely was setting on us before we were ready for it. Then letting it set for another 20 minutes before we went through the taste test just made it be hard as a rock. Where I ended up having to run the apple under hot water just to get a taste of it, and I think that might have affected my feelings on the recipe, where it didn't end up being very good. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But that's it for Mystical Munchies. Next up, let's go through Ask Me Anything. For those of you who are happening on this recap as you being your very first end-of-month recap, first of all, welcome to the channel. Secondly, Ask Me Anything is a segment where you can ask me questions in any video, and as long as it's not too personal, I'll usually answer it during these recaps. The way you're going to get a question on this segment is from any video from this recap to the video before the end of December recap, and I'll let you guys know when that's starting to come up. You can leave me a question in any video with an AMA tag, and I'll answer it during the Ask Me Anything recap I'll answer during the Ask Me Anything segment during the end of month recap. And actually we had quite a few questions for the Ask Me Anything segment this month, so I'll tab over to my notes. When I was playing Terraforming Mars the dice game, Jester wanted me to chime in on all 3 Terraforming Mars games. Terraforming Mars Base, Ares Expedition, and the dice game. Compare them all, how I rank them, and which one's the best for solo. So Terraforming Mars, the base game, basically has you playing all 5 phases. There's I believe what is it? What's the word I want for it? I know what the phases are, but I can't think of the name for it. It's a development phase, then development, what's the next one? Building, I think. Something like that. Action, production, and research. So in the base game, you actually play through all 5 of those phases, and I thought that was a little bit too much. Whereas the Ares Expedition, you're playing through. You basically end up doing at most 2 phases a round. At least in the solo mode, you do at least 2 phases every turn, depending on what you pick for your phase and what the automa picks against you. Whereas the dice game, there's really no automa to play against. you could just go through your turns taking a support action and then a main action. As far as how I'd rank them, I would actually probably go Ares Expedition first, just because to me it feels like the right balance between a quicker game in the dice game and the longer game in Terraforming Mars, the base game. So I'd go Ares Expedition, then Terraforming Mars, the dice game, then Terraforming Mars base game. I thought base game was a little bit too much, and I think base game is a little bit clunky for solo anyway, just because it's fairly complicated to get everything set up for that. Whereas Ares Expedition and dice game are much more straightforward solos. Where like I said, for the dice game for Ares Expedition, you have a second deck of cards that you use to represent the Automa's turn. And what they're doing, they'll give you a second phase to go through, but you might not get the bonus for that unless you lead the same phase. Whereas the dice game plays very, very quickly. I think that was the quickest one of the 3 we played. It might have taken a little bit over an hour. Let me look here. Gameplay videos. This is going to take a little bit to load up. But like I said, I think the dice game played the quickest. I don't think I'm going to put the Ares Expedition. Dice game. Played a little over an hour, so that's not terrible. I don't think I'm going to put Terraforming Mars, the base game, on the channel, just because, like I said, it felt like it was even too much for me. So I like Ares Expedition and the dice game better for solo. I think if you're going to ask me to pick one or the other, I'm probably going to pick Ares Expedition just because, to me, it's kind of the right balance. Then when I was unboxing Cartographer's Heroes, Jester chimed in as well about when I'm getting to the table and doing a play-along. I actually plan to get this to the table in December, but we'll talk more about what I'm doing in December a little bit later. During the end of October recap, Matthew wanted me to weigh in on what the board game shelf is looking like with a growing collection. Quite frankly, it looks like a mess right now. I'm trying to work on reorganizing that. I'm actually doing a big cull of my board game and my Call of Cthulhu books collection. I'm going to be taking a bunch of stuff out to Noble Night tomorrow and getting rid of a bunch of it, making some more space. But I'm going to try to do a little bit more organizing with that in the next few months. And then during Appa Hockey, Jester wanted me to chime in as well on which sports games I'm getting to the channel and the sports I'm interested in playing. So as you might have seen, I have Appa Golf as well. I do have Payoff Pitch Baseball. I also have Glory Days College Football and Glory Days Boxing. I'm planning on for sure getting Glory Days Boxing and potentially Glory Days College Football to the channel. I'm actually thinking about getting all of those to the channel. As far as the sports I'm interested in playing, hockey is a big one just because it feels very action-packed. I'm planning on getting... I am actually interested in baseball and golf as well. The one sport... I'm open to a lot of sports, but the one sport I want nothing to do with is basketball. I've never been a fan of basketball at all. So anything basketball would be a pretty hard pass for yours truly. But let's bring it back up top, and we'll talk about what's coming in December. Normally at this point in the year, I'm still getting ready for the curtain to fall on my work year, but I usually have like a few days left during the year. This year, however, actually marked my 15-year anniversary at my current job, and that came with a few things. One of which was the luggage you saw earlier this year on the channel, and that looked really cool. More important to December, however, was more PTO. Throughout the year, I normally use my PTO onesie-twosie, taking a day here, a day there, and burning what's left in December, which usually amounts to like a nice 3-week break in December. This year, however, marks the first time that I have enough PTO remaining to take the entire month of December off. So you're probably asking, okay, what does that ramble mean to the channel? We're going to experiment a bit on the channel. My local game store sells nerdy-themed advent calendars, and it inspired me mostly in the name for what we're going to call December. I've been talking off and on about a content explosion in December, where I plan to post a lot of videos in December, and I do plan to post a lot of videos in December, but I never had a catchy name for it rather than just the December content explosion. Now, just doesn't roll off the tongue very well, so enter the Advent calendar. This Advent calendar is actually going to last for the entire month of December, whereas a normal Advent calendar lasts just until Christmas. And in what I think is a much catchier name, we're going to call December Advent of the Phoenix. The plan is to upload a lot of new videos, and quite a few of the games will be new to the channel. As for some of those games, we will of course be featuring Christmas in Arkham, with Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, and Elder Sign. Among the other games, I'm also planning to feature Mr. President over the course of a few videos, along with the finals of the Greatest Boxer Tournament and Title Bout 2. But otherwise, I'm not really going to announce all of the games this month right now. I will mention, though, that Mr. President video is likely to be very clunky, just because I have not had a chance to get that game out, but I will at least give the rulebook a very good thumb-through before that game hits the channel. But I will also announce the next game at the end of each video, since I do have the schedule and I need to know what I'm going to be setting up next. All I'll say for now, though, is buckle up. This is going to be a very fun but very busy month on the channel. And when we reconvene for the end of December recap, I'd pop some popcorn if I were you. That recap is going to be a long one. Coming back to the Greatest Boxer Tournament and Title Bout 2, our location for the finals is going to bring us back to the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, where we'll have some kind of twist. I don't know what that twist is going to be yet. There has to be something new I can add to the tournament, though. I'll look and see what we can do while the spotlight shines the brightest on our finalists. And of course, we can't forget about Mystical Munchies in all of this. In December, we're going to visit one of my very favorite video game franchises as we cook out of the Final Fantasy XIV Ultimate Cookbook. We'll be making Crab Croquette, Honey Muffin, Farmer's Breakfast, and Papa Nazi. As we have 5 Saturdays in the month, and I use the Saturdays for scheduling purposes to determine if I need a drink or not. And since we have 5 Saturdays in December, we do need a drink for the month, so we'll make a good old-fashioned batch of lemonade. Now that the month is all set up, let's go ahead and wrap this video up. That's the end of November recap. We're going to start the Advent of the Phoenix off a bit small tomorrow, with the Investigator intro to Christmas in Arkham, and then after I come back from Noble Knight, we're probably going to get our first game on the channel as we play Mag 23 Guadalcanal from Historic Wings. Saturday we'll start Mystical Munchies with the appetizer, Crab Croquette. And Sunday we're starting Christmas in Arkham proper with the first leg of the campaign as we play Eldritch Horror. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.